John Williams is of course the famous film composer behind some of the most beloved film scores of all time. He has written countless instantly recognisable themes, but what you may not be aware of is that many of these famous themes are sort of borrowed from, or at least heavily inspired by, some of the great composers that came before Williams. For example, let's have a listen to John Williams' score for this scene from Star Wars, where C-3PO is wandering the deserts of Tatooine. Actually no, that's The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky. No, that's my mistake, sorry. Here's the actual music that John Williams wrote. Of course, I'm being silly, but the two pieces are strikingly similar. Both the Stravinsky and John Williams themes are based on this dissonant woodwind polychord. A polychord is when two chords are stacked on top of each other. In The Rite of Spring, Stravinsky has stacked alternating E-flat minor and D-flat minor chords over a sustained D minor chord. John Williams obviously thought this dissonant, mysterious polychord idea would suit this scene in Star Wars, so he's almost used the exact same set of polychords. The only difference is whereas Stravinsky sustained a D minor chord underneath the E-flat minor and D-flat minor, Williams alternates the bottom chord between D minor and C minor. And this isn't the only moment from Star Wars that seems to have been inspired by Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring. Later in Star Wars, we get this percussive polychordal string motif. Which is very reminiscent of this moment from The Rite of Spring. Even beyond these two quite obvious moments, Stravinsky was clearly a major influence on John Williams, as was another early 20th century composer, Gustav Holst. Gustav Holst is most famous for his Planets Suite, a set of 7 orchestral pieces, each themed around a planet. Which, of course, if you're tasked with writing an orchestral film score for a film based in space, Holst and his planets serve as an obvious source of inspiration. For example, this dramatic moment from the scene where the rebels are about to blow up the Death Star is almost directly lifted from Holst's Mars, Bringer of War. Williams has changed one note in the distinctive orchestral chord and slightly adjusted the rhythm, but the effect and idea are quite similar. Another of Holst's planet-themed pieces that Williams seems to have been inspired by is Neptune. Have a listen to John Williams' score for the opening scene of Return of the Jedi. Oh, no, I've done it again. That's actually Neptune by Holst we're listening to. This is the John Williams score. Now, of course, I am exaggerating, particularly in this example. The two pieces are not the same, but there is a clear influence here. Another composer who John Williams seemingly borrowed from is Tchaikovsky. For example, here is the opening of Tchaikovsky's famous violin concerto. And here is the opening of Princess Leia's theme from Star Wars. You can hear how Williams has borrowed the opening leap from A up to F sharp and then adapted it to create his own theme. So far we've only talked about Star Wars, but of course John Williams has composed music for many iconic films, and another film score of his which was inspired by Tchaikovsky is Home Alone. This manic but light-hearted cue that Williams has composed for this scene in Home Alone seems to be an almost direct homage of the Treepack dance from Tchaikovsky's famous ballet, The Nutcracker. And that makes perfect sense because The Nutcracker is a Christmas story, just like Home Alone. Audiences already associate the music of The Nutcracker with Christmas, so by making his Home Alone score reminiscent of the Nutcracker music, Williams is making sure his music sounds Christmassy. One of John Williams' most instantly recognisable themes is the Jaws theme. The simple but suspenseful two-note motif perfectly depicts the titular shark. Now, it's quite possible that Williams got the idea for this alternating semitone motif from the fourth movement of Dvořák's Ninth Symphony. Both pieces open with this tension-building semitone pivot, but of course they do then go off in different directions. And the last example we'll look at today of John Williams wearing his influences a bit too clearly on his sleeve is the opening theme of the 1942 film King's Row. I'm sure from just hearing that you can already guess which John Williams theme was inspired by King's Row. Both of these themes open in the exact same way, but they do then diverge into ultimately distinctly different pieces of music. And that is basically always the case with these examples that we've looked at today. John Williams will borrow some idea from an existing classical work, but then use it as the foundation of a new melody. We can still hear the original work that was borrowed in Williams' music, but that doesn't necessarily mean Williams is stealing or plagiarising. Borrowing ideas from the artists that came before you is a cornerstone of creativity. Williams is never outright copying ideas verbatim and then presenting them as his own. He is always adapting and redeveloping any material that he borrows, creating new and valuable music in the process.